thank you for that insight as well. And maybe on the lighter note, like for someone who's absolutely new to this pattern of like judging the journals, or there are a lot of terminologies like citations in the Google Scholar itself, like H index, I index. Maybe can you touch upon those parameters? What does they really?
Yeah. So first of all, I would distinguish the career perspective side and sort of the science part. So on the science part, normally we try to not use metrics as the way to judge. You can use citations, definitely, but it doesn't mean like the study is perfect. There are a lot of studies, there are even studies that have been retracted and still being cited somehow. This happens quite often, and so that's why you have to work out your own judgment, the way you judge studies. You have to become expert. This is the point, that you're an expert when you can definitely know to what extent you can trust the study that you read. Now, this is why often we, when I say we, I mean, it depends, but a lot of people who are experts, to some extent, they tend not to like H indices, whatever other indices that exist. And they try not to count citations, but they want to see the contribution to the field in the first place. And the contribution, how do you judge it? It's tricky, because it depends on time. Like if something is published today, we don't know how much of an impact it will make until the time passes, because there could be a lot of unforeseen situations when some studies just, they come out of nowhere from the past and then become super heavily cited because somebody discovered something in a neighboring field. So it's really hard to judge. Now, when it comes to careers, this is where things become very different. So I hear very often, I might be wrong, again, this is where you guys can probably advise me on this, but I hear often that, for example, in India, people are judged on their H indices when funding is allocated, when positions are allocated. I don't know to what extent. So which universities, which institutes, and which funding agencies, I don't know, but I hear that. I know that in Europe, it also happens. It's not that uncommon, that the number of papers you publish transition sort of in a high chance of being selected for funding. Now, the same goes for positions. So if you want to become a postdoc, often you want to publish sometimes more than less, if in certain places with certain advisors. But at the same time, if you go to like some of the most prominent means like widely recognized schools across the globe, generally they tend to look at the quality of studies, not the quantity. So you see, like, it really depends on what your opportunities are, what you're looking for, where you're going next. And that way you can, I mean, it really depends on this. So the H index is just, the how many citations and how many papers you have. That there's a tiny formula that you can check online if you want. The higher the H index, normally, of course, the more perhaps the person publishes and gets cited at the same time in some way. But it's a very simple thing. It's just when your citations are equal to your number of papers, like at which point, at which number. But it's not a very good indicator. So we see people who have very small H indices and they're incredibly good at science, and people want to invite them everywhere, want to work with them and so on. And we see people who have very good H indices and they very, very high. And unfortunately, the impact is not scaling with that H index as a result. So this is something we see often too. So really, I wouldn't look at that. It's something that, at least myself, I almost never look at that. I organize my own electrochemical colloquia, which are very, very popular now within the broader, like there are many thousands of people who come, but Whenever I invite people, I never really look at the H indices and so on. I look at these deep science. I go into the papers of those people. I read them carefully, and I check, are they raising the questions that are really important? Are they can they ignite my curiosity? Can they make me feel like, wow, okay, that looks like it's indeed very interesting? There are not that many people like this, not that many. And I'm not like one of them too, I should say. But it doesn't mean like I cannot judge, and everyone can judge. So find your own way of looking at this. But also, of course, keep in mind that you should not be biased completely, because I see, for example, we see applicants quite often. When I say we, I mean many PIs who hire PhD students. We see many applicants coming and claiming that, well, we have like 10 papers already published during our master degree. You must give us a PhD position. Like, we are perfect. And then you check the papers and like the quality is not very high, but then like, how do you judge it? And so if you're in that mindset as a student, you may not quite be predictive about your opportunities. At the same time, if you get into the mindset of, oh, I want to get one very perfect paper out of my PhD, and if you live in a place, or you want to go into a place where they still judge you on the number of papers, you may be in trouble again. So you want to balance sort of your career, your personal development, your personal perspectives, your opportunities that come from these metrics, because there's still, it's connected. There's no way you can, I don't deny that they're connected with where you want to go. There is this and that balance, it's tricky. So my advice is normally talk to others, talk to people who work in places, at places where you want to go next to. Try to see, like, if you want to go for professorship to some IIIT, one of the IIIT. So you want to talk to faculties there who are young and check their profiles. What do they have in their profiles? What kind of quality did they get? Like, how do they get their positions? You want to go to MIT as a faculty, you have a completely different strategy for exploring what it is, what it takes to be an MIT, a successful MIT candidate as a faculty. So you see, like, it is it really depends, but you have to keep exploring this. And your metrics is not like, oh, let's completely forget metrics. It's not about this. And it's not about, oh, let's just follow the metrics because it's the only way we can judge people. It's also wrong.
Okay, then, yeah, maybe Arun, if you want to comment on one of the comment that Dr. Andrew has mentioned related to the in the Indian scenario, yeah, because Arun was being a part of academia for quite a few years, so he's a good person to mention about these aspects.
Yeah, so previously I was working as a research head in one of the research labs in one of the universities there. So it is kind of worse in India, I would say. Like, you people in India judge based on the number of publications and number of fundings that you get. But the problem here is there are two sides of the story. Like, the government agencies, usually they claim that they look at the publications and the funding that you get is because there is no other way to shortlist the number of applications. Because in India, since you have this huge number of people who are working in academia, you get a large number of applications for just one call in a particular area. It's often like for even a very specific area, they might get 100 plus applications, and there would be like possibility for 2 fundings or 2 grants. So that is the one side of the story, because I also have worked with a DST funding, the government funding, for long, for like 3 years. The other side of the story is if there is a call and they want to conduct the review at a faster pace, then the easiest way is to look, okay, do we get something back? Do we get something in return? And how they assess that they get something in return is based upon the quality of the papers they are published. Like, it is easy for them. So these are like the two sides of the story that goes in India. And this is very kind of the same call is there in faculty selection also, even in IITs, even in NITs. It is kind of like you should have a minimum number of SCI index journals, even to go through the shortlist. No matter what, like if you have one good paper, if you're a fluid mechanics guy, if you have one paper in JFM, it means a lot. But certain times, people then again compare the numbers. Some has like 4 papers with like 4 to 5 impact factor journals, then they are preferred more rather than a JFM. So this is the kind of story in India. So I got very tired of the race there, and it is too stressful. So even now I'm thinking to consider industry rather than academia.
Yeah, this is what I mean. It really
Yeah.
depends on where you go and in which place you want to get your position. So definitely, that's why I wouldn't advise people, just go for perfect quality or go for perfect quantity. You can get into trouble in both cases.
Yeah.
And I mean, ethically, of course, you want to go for the best quality. No, not a question. But unfortunately, the selection is not always following ethics. Not everywhere. Like again, in Europe, it's very similar. We can have 500 applicants for one position. So yeah, I don't think that there will be as many candidates with one paper who will get to the end. It's hard. It's really hard. So you want to make sure that paper is absolutely stunning, and it's difficult. So there's always a risk, like a risk-reward kind of ratio, that you just pick the one that you feel you will be comfortable with. And like you said, Arun, you're totally right that be sure if you want to go into, so if you don't want to go into academia, it all doesn't matter. Now, if you want to go into academia, you want to make sure you're not super focused on academia. Like your mindset still has a bit of room to think about industry or to think about anything outside academia, because there you can do equally interesting research or even more impactful things, a lot more impactful. And most people will go there anyway, at one point anyway. So being prepared for this I think is very, very important from the early on.
Yeah.
Because if you get biased during a PhD for academic career too much, then later on, it's so hard to get out of this mindset. It's very difficult. And so the other thing that I can mention is the one that I often say to my own students is that when you do research, you want to do it anyway in the quality in the highest quality possible within your circumstances. Why? Is because even if you go to industry, they value quality. Like, no, I don't think there will be as many companies who want to work with those who produce something that doesn't make sense. It's rare. Like you don't want to probably join those companies. I put it this way. So it means like if you get used to getting the best quality that yourself and having that feeling of, okay, there's this bad quality here, let me improve it. I know how long it will take. I know what I'm capable of. Like you learn yourself, you learn your approaches, your style, how to get there, of course, then you might be able to progress in your industry positions way faster. You may be able to find more interesting opportunities later, and more people will be inviting you. So we often see that people who are really capable of deep and careful and critical thinking, they go far in industry. They have fewer problems. Doesn't mean that you will be perfect, no, but you will have a high chance. So in any way, my point is that in all cases, research quality matters. Like learning how to do this, because it's your PhD is when you learn. It's not like when you publish. Yes, you publish, it's a byproduct, but for yourself, something that will stay with you for many decades, perhaps, is your ability to analytically think or critically think, to convey what you want to convey. So it's communication skills, like what we're discussing today. All these things, they come with you out of your PhD often, and you want to learn it. And of course, research quality, and in general, how to get the best quality possible, is an absolutely important skill. So I wouldn't hunt numbers in the first place. I would try to hunt quality in the first place. But if I see like, okay, it's better to just get a few more papers, maybe compromising not the quality, but maybe the extent of impact, making it less broad, maybe a bit more narrow. I'd still publish 3 papers and get that next position. So the next time when I get finally independent, I can do the studies I want. Probably it's better.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so piling upon that topic of publishing in a quality journal, could you comment on what are the preparation required to publish, in a high quality journal like Nature? What make this journal so distinct, and how can emerging researchers meet their criteria for publication in such journals?
So again, what makes them unique?
Yeah, what makes them unique, and what are the preparation required for publishing in such quality journals?
So I think the best ways, of course, you also invite people from the Nature editorial board. They will probably be able to give a bit more like in numbers, sort of a more justified answer. I can give you my own perspective, but then it doesn't mean like everyone thinks the same way. In my view, journals like Nature and Science are broad audience journals. What it means that whatever is published there will likely go far in terms of the reach. It's like you can reach bigger audience. Like imagine that you have you have 5 social media accounts. One has 1,000 followers, the other one has 10,000, the other one is 100,000, the other one is million. So Nature is more like a million. So you can post everywhere, but of course the more followers you have, you want to be more careful about what you post. You want to go with more quality controlled posting. The same goes with Nature. They want to see high quality. Doesn't mean that it's always the case. They want to see high impact. So a broader audience will appreciate the study, will be sort of reshaped by these studies. So for example, if I find a paper on biology that I find, oh, that's fascinating. Maybe, it changes my mindset a little bit. It introduces some extra input. I wouldn't be able to find this paper because I don't work in biology in some other journals. But I see in Nature because it's like a billboard. It shows me that very clearly. It doesn't mean like I would read it, like every single paper there, but at least there's a higher likelihood that I would bump into it. And maybe I would think, oh, why don't we try the same? Or why don't I get in touch with these authors? Or let me keep in mind that topic. It's actually very interesting. So there is this broader perspective. So the broadness is your asset if you're a journal. So your audience is your asset, right? And the broader your audience is, the more valuable you are to the community in some way. And then, of course, the higher the standards that you can set. So that's sort of on my about my own opinion about Nature and Science, and probably Cell and many other journals that exist there. Now, of course, I have to say that it doesn't mean that every single paper is high quality. We have in my field plenty of really poor quality, non-reproducible studies. There are papers that are retracted all the time. So this happens. It's not uncommon at all. So it doesn't mean like the quality control is that high. Still, it's pretty good compared to many other journals, especially given that they publish very few studies. So it's very selective. Now this is why Nature, why Science. Now the second question you had is about how to publish there, or like what makes a paper stand out in Nature, or what? Maybe
you can repeat it again. Preparation, required for publishing, and like
what is required. So I think this is where you can have a perfect and outstanding study that will get a Nobel Prize later and declined, rejected from Nature. It's quite possible. we see plenty of studies that make big difference for the community that are not published there. And we see papers published there without getting as many, like even barely getting any citations. They exist.
Yeah.
Now, so it means like if you reject it, it's not because your study is bad, but it's because this specific editor or those specific people who reviewed your manuscript, who might not be on your side, who might be your competitors, who might be just wanting you not to publish there, or who might have had their own nature, similar papers rejected previously, and they would think, oh, why should your paper be published now? No, wait, our paper was rejected, now yours will be also rejected, sorry. Like, there's a lot of retaliation in academia. It's awful, but that's how it works. I don't know, maybe there will be some mechanisms implemented further on that would like remove this sort of component, but I don't see it right now. Unfortunately, it's happening. So you can be rejected based on this, and you never know. It doesn't mean like your study is bad. So Nature is not like a badge. Oh, you have a great study, and if you don't get that badge, your study is bad. Absolutely not. So that's number one thing. Second is that if you probably want to make sure your study is relevant for a broader audience. Even if you go to Nature Chemistry, Nature Physics, Nature whatever, there are new journals, Nature Water, Nature Sustainability, and all this. So you want to make sure that for that community, for the entire community, your study might be helpful and interesting. So it's not too narrow. Oh, the way you explain it is not too narrow, if I put it this way, maybe. Perhaps. So this is where the way you communicate your study, the way you describe your paper, should be in a very particular way. So this is why I say, like, okay, if you're a student who wants to go to try one of these journals, or you want to write a paper that would be similar, like at least style-wise, to some of these journals, make sure you find a few papers in those journals, read them, and break them down into components. Try to find links and try to understand the style, the deep style, like what makes this study stand out as a broad audience sort of focused research. It's like what does it make it appealing for a broad audience? So this is where you can do these things too, and then yeah, if you make your manuscript final, let's say now you've written it in the perfect way, you have a perfect cover letter, you explain why, what, and all this, and then you submit, then you just let the editors decide. There are studies where people think, oh, like, why can it go to such a high impact journal? Because like the study is too narrow and boring and like low quality. We see it quite often. So which means like you never know if it can go through or not. You can try, but the rejection rate is very high. So there is no very particular things that like a checkbox that you have to go through and then you will be accepted. No, it's a lot of subjective feeling about your paper that people should have. Like if the editor will have a very positive, still subjective, but positive feeling about your paper, you have a high chance of going to the review stage. Now you have to have the same with the reviewers, and then perhaps you will get published.
Yeah, thank you.
It takes time, and it often what we see also, you can check the dates of the submission, revision, and publication, and it can be up to several years from the type of submission to the time of acceptance. Which like it just gives you a sense of sort of how the internal process may be going. So there are maybe a lot of hurdles that you have to go through, maybe even longer than your study actually took in your lab. It's like it's not normal, I think, because it delays the study and it destroys careers because it's still your manuscript is not published and you cannot like apply for a lot of things. So that's why I normally advise students, and we do it all the time, like we submit papers to archive and any, like as a preprint, as long as your funding agency allows for this, and as long as the journal where you go allows for this, this is a good option, just to make sure your study is out there so people can find it, you can try to cite it, and so on. but still be prepared for a wild ride if you go to big journals, if you have a really good study, but still no study is perfect. You never know what you expect. And actually the same can go everywhere, like in any other journal. Community journals, that could be pretty low impact factor, but you can be sort of roasted. Your study can be roasted there too, quite heavily by the reviewers. So it's depends.
Okay.
Brings more clarity now. Thank you.
Yeah. So touching upon one of the points that you mentioned during this discussion, like I mean, like to hear the broader spectrum of your perspective that's related to the academic rivalry and paper rejections. How often, like, one may come across this sort of pattern, and what is the best way to mitigate this stuff? And at times, like, I used to feel something like the review process is being done without any monetary benefits. So like for even those who have passed out PhD recently, they have been receiving, like, for me personally, like, I've been receiving a lot of emails related to fields which have now not been exposed to for review purpose. And like why I'm getting it, and even from a learning perspective, if I went in for review, I may not learn completely what they are doing it exactly. Even some of the technical terms I have to go deep and then understand and then review that paper. And then by the end, like, it's a time that we are putting, the time and effort we are putting, and we may not be give the full what authentic reviewing process to that paper. And if, like, and these processes are without any monetary benefit. So at times I've seen in the social medias, like, there is a campaign going for making monetary benefits for reviewing, and it should be given to genuine person. And so I just want to know your perspective about these aspects. One is the academic rivalry, and like
Sure.
the reviewing process, and whether we should do any sort of what price for that, like in terms of the time and energy that the reviewer is putting forward.
That's a very good question. I'll try to go step by step. So first, you mentioned that you get a lot of reviews, invitations to review manuscripts. That's quite common. The reason is because we have an explosion of a number of scientists. So there are a lot of people, especially when they migrate from one field to another. You can have like a lot more papers than we can reasonably review. Like sometimes PhD students get invitations for reviews just because there's just no experts who can really review these papers. But normally, this is where, again, the impact factor can come into play in a positive way, sort of. So the higher the impact factor, the less likely a reviewer who's completely outside the field or too junior would get a chance to review the manuscript. Some people think it's great. Some people think it's not really good, because you can still bump into really unreasonable reviewers or your competitors, which is even worse. And so this is why there are so many. And then whether you review it or not, it's up to you. So you decide. I should say that if you get an invitation for you, doesn't mean that you have to do it. So it's a commitment that you have to decide you want to do it or not. Especially if it comes from a journal that is known to be somewhat predatory. Of course, then you essentially do a free review for a predatory journal. So then you decide you want to do it or not. Second is, you said money, whether we should pay for reviews, for reviewing. And this is the topic, I mean, it's been discussed for quite a long time, to be honest, because I mean, it's pretty obvious that you're spending your own time on this, and your time is precious. The bigger your group is, the more money you have in your lab, the more costly your time becomes. So and some of the manuscripts can take not just hours, it can take many hours, especially given that you have to write the review, and then you have to re-review later when it's resubmitted, and so on. So this is tricky now. Some professors can delegate those reviews to their own students in a group, sort of practice, and then, but it's still difficult again to decide on how much time to spend. So of course, if somebody pays, perhaps it would be an incentive for some people to review more. Still, this is where we should be careful, because when you have, so let's say you're one of the best experts in the field, your time cost is very high, like 1 hour, maybe a few $100, let's say. Then how many hours do you spend on a review? 3 hours. Is the journal ready to pay you that much? No. You still, like, it's not like you get a lot. And then of course those money will have to be justified. Like, it's not like an income, right? How do you justify? What if it's paid from outside of your country? Then you have tax, and like there's so much headache comes with it. Then you're like, I'm not sure if really I need that. I mean, maybe would be nice, but then, and then you have to have prices depending on the country, because they're in different incomes, right? It should scale with the income of the country, perhaps. That becomes a headache, a lot of headache, actually, quite a bit. And then you have another problem that there will be a lot of people who will be happy to review. And like today we have these sort of trade mills on papers. So you submit, I put you as a reviewer, I submit, I put you a reviewer, you submit, you put me, and we're happy. And there are a lot of other trade mills that people have. And like, this would become the same with reviewing. So people will start earning on that quite clearly. And given the fact that a lot of this reviewing can be done today, much of the texts can be written through AI, you end up with like factories of reviews. So how do you manage this? How do you make sure that the person gets that payback? Yes, so you pay the person for the reviewing, but then how do you make sure that it's not used to earn money? Once it's used to earn money, specifically to earn money, not to do big science, but to earn money, then the science is compromised, the reviews are compromised. So there is, it's not that easy. I'm not saying like there's a perfect solution. Absolutely no. I don't know how this can be solved. I agree that we spend too much time on review, and people just don't have that time. At the same time, I don't see how a well-paid review can be implemented. Maybe if authors pay for the manuscript, that those money can go to reviewers, maybe. But how many people will agree to review, say, for just because they're paid $40, $50 or $100? Is it a lot? It depends on where you live and how costly your time is. Especially if you're an expert and you have very little time for those reviews, it's tricky. Now, like this, I don't think there's an easy answer. I see a lot of papers, a lot of comments on Nature and Science, and of course on LinkedIn and Twitter, people keep discussing it. But I think a lot of community members, they take a biased opinion, they're too biased, either to like, oh, we have to pay everyone because it's our time, like we spend our working time, we do work for free, which makes no sense. Or to like, oh, let's make sure our science is perfect. And we need to do it for free, because otherwise we compromise scientific quality of these reviews. If you don't want to review it, don't review it. But if you don't want to review it and you get paid, maybe you will review it, right? And then the quality will be compromised. So there are like two parties, and there are very few people in between. And I personally think that until we get people in between, there will be probably no big change, because we need to find the fine line.